Hey, welcome to week 10. This is the beginning of Unit 4. This is a very exciting unit. It's my favorite unit, and I need to tell you that it's a very, very busy unit. It's only 2 weeks long, all right? You have more work than normal. I know the class may have been feeling a little self-paced up until now. It's not anymore. There's a very big project due within 2 weeks. You have a very important blog post or two, and you have discussions, and you have a lot of reading, and you want to get this project right. It's a very, very heavily graded project, and I have a lot of very specific criteria. Basically, the project relates to the history of photography. I'm a huge fan of the history of photography. I started studying the history of photography probably when I was about 18 years old, and I've never given up. I've been around the world, halfway around the world, and I've gone to many of the historical sites of many of the early photographers, including many in the American Southwest where photography really took off, and I'm very proud of some of my photographs that I've taken that are deliberate reproductions of historical photographs. That said, history to me is the clue to our civilization. It's the clue to us as a fully actualized human being. It's the clue to you as any kind of professional in any kind of a field, particularly in any kind of artistic field. There's always people that have come before you that have been very, very important in the field. You can look at the history of rock music, and all of the major rock musicians, they went to New Orleans, all the way back to Elvis Presley. You know, they studied the roots of jazz, the roots of blues. Eric Clapton, the Beatles, all those people were very, very involved in the early history of rock and roll, the earlier history of music in general. Okay, it goes back to the Harlem Renaissance. It goes back before that. Many famous rock and rollers have been to the School of Music, School of Juilliard, where they studied classical music. So basically, as a photographer, as a visual artist, you're part of a much larger conversation, an historic conversation that began a long, long time ago and has been participated in by many, many people, and is still continuing, and is continuing in the future. And it's up to you to be part of that conversation. And this is where your own excellence develops, all right, is becoming part of this conversation. That's great. You know, you can invent new things, but you still build on what came before. That's what we do, okay? And it's unfortunate that history has such a bad rap, the way maybe it got taught in high school or whatever, or the fact that in today's society we actually kind of ignore history. You know, witness the Vietnam War, witness the Iraq War, witness the Afghanistan War. If we'd been much more cognizant of the history of those countries, the background of those countries, we wouldn't have gotten involved in some of these fruitless endeavors that have been very costly to our nation's treasure, okay, in both personnel and in actual outright money, all right. So that said, I don't belabor that point, but I think you should find the history of photography interesting. Now, to get you through the unit, I have quite a few readings. Please look at the overview, item 1 in the unit, Unit 4, item 1. Please look at the readings. The textbook chapter course is extremely critical because all of this is going to give you ideas of how you're going to go about your own project, right? How are you going to create this project? Briefly speaking, the project's a PowerPoint. I'm expecting a very elaborate, very visually oriented, very analytical PowerPoint from you in 2 weeks that goes over the history of one photographer. All right, you get to choose, but I give you a lot of help. All right, so if you look at the overview, item 1, if you look at the readings very carefully, item 2, you'll get ideas. There's a very interesting textbook companion website. I'm the author of the webmaster for that website. Take a look at the resources that I provide there to help guide you to the photographer of your choice. All right. Make sure, please, you look at the lectures. Item 4.1, Invention of Photography. Item 4.2, Masters of Photography. Then I have an optional lecture on nude photography. It's one of my favorite lectures. All right, but it might not, doesn't have to be yours, so it's optional. Okay, but nude photography is very much part of the history of photography, just like it is part of the history of painting, part of the history of sculpture, you name it, all right? I do have a very important blog assignment for you. I want you to start early in that. I want you to find some pictures I want you to describe the photographer that you're going to do, and I want you to find some pictures from that photographer, put those pictures up on your blog, put the description up on your blog, and state specifically what interests you about this photographer. It's a very important blog entry, and I'll be looking critically at that. Classroom discussion, we have item 6.1, why study history, item 6.2, combat photography, huge impact on the history of photography, a war, of course, you know. We have then more important one actually is photography reform. Many, many, many photographers have used their craft, their visual communication craft, as an agent of reform, all right? And then there's an optional discussion on nude photography, and frankly, I find that always a very lively discussion, okay? Very interesting one. Then I've provided item 7, some historical resources for you. A beautiful collection of Life magazine photos, very carefully archived by Google, thank you. And then I also send you to the National Archives Digital Vault. This is the actual archives of the United States of America. It's incredible, all right? Send you there. That's item 7.2. Then Item 8, item 8.1 through 8.7 very carefully unfolds for you your PowerPoint project, all right? I give you item 8.1, a complete description. It's critical that you look at that and understand that. And there is a rubric there. I very carefully point you to how I'm going to grade and judge this assignment, okay? Then I give you a brilliant student example, maybe a little too text intensive for my exact tastes. Maybe I gave it a 98 or a 99, all right? But it's very, very brilliantly done. Then I send you to Ask the Librarian, because I want this to be analytical. This is not a Wikipedia entry. I know about all these photographers already. What I don't know always is their exact contribution, all right? And I need for you to analyze that and say, what did these people actually contribute? Not just picture-wise, but what did they contribute to the growth of the craft, right? Or to the growth of society, something like that, okay? That's what analysis means. It's what is the contribution. I don't want a lot of biographical data. You need a teeny tiny bit, but not a lot of they were born, their parents were, blah, 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 they won this award, that award. That's irrelevant, okay? What's relevant is your analysis of the meaning that they've added to society, the meaning they've added to the craft of photography, all right? And so you can ask the librarian for some help with that, right? How do you find good articles? That's what you're looking for, is good research articles on these photographers, just like you would in W233, the research writing class. Then I give you some specific help with PowerPoint. If you've never done a PowerPoint before, it's too bad, all right? You're going to need to get up to speed real quickly. Very often you have to compress your pictures. Blackboard hates large files, so to make your PowerPoint smaller, you might have to compress your pictures. I tell you how to do that in item 8.5. Then you submit your PowerPoint in 2 places. It's critical that you do this, all right, that you submit it in both places. 8.6 is where you submit your PPT to me so I can grade it, all right? I can't grade it in a public discussion, don't forget. And then item 8.7 is where you peer review it, where you share it with each other. Okay, I better quit yakking on, but please notice this is my favorite unit. This is where the grading gets real serious. You've got 2 full weeks. That's not long to complete a very major project. If you have questions, you know how to get a hold of me.